My name is Jeff St Laurent. This is the live Tuesday call, and we have some good people on the line today. I'm excited for the call, as always. Why wouldn't I be excited, right? It's always great to connect with people. Today's topic is how to build your number one business asset, your email list. And so we're going to talk about this. This is something that I know even starting off for myself years ago, I didn't value my email list. I didn't do anything with my email list. You know, I'd do events and things like that, but I wouldn't build a list, or I had people's contact information, but then I didn't know what to do with it. And I certainly wasn't using my email list, at least for my first 2 years, and then I started to understand the value of it and moving on from there. So hopefully I'll be able to give you some great information later on so that you can start to understand the value of it, but also more importantly, strategies and how to use it, especially understand what you mean by why is it our number one asset and how we use it in that way. Before we get rolling on that, the Tuesday calls are always recorded. I put them on my website in my university, sellingcoaching.com. Go to the university, check that out. Great resource for education for coaches, for yourself. Of course, if you know anyone else that's a peer coach or someone that you work with as well, please refer them to that, sellingcoaching.com, under the university. Great resources there. Another great resource on my homepage at sellingcoaching.com is my ultimate startup guide for new coaches. I bribe you with my dog, so to speak, there, and then you can always enter your name and email. You'll get a copy of the guide. It's audio and PDF as well, so pretty comprehensive to help get you started, and some really good points in there to get you thinking about as you begin your coaching journey, or even if you've started it but feel like you need a little bit more to kind of pull things together to really create some momentum. So that's my Ultimate Startup Guide on my homepage. And then at the top, you'll also see an invitation to my private Facebook group. Again, great group of coaches there. We're over 1,600 in there, growing strong and steady each and every week. And a great place to interact more, but then also speak your message, develop your message, do a lot of video things on there as well. So just an invitation there. And then lastly, on my website, sellingcoaching.com, on the Work With Me page, if you're in a position where you know either you're starting off and you're like, oh, I know I need some guidance, or maybe you started off and you're frustrated and you're not quite sure where to go because there's so much out there. Consider mentoring with me one-on-one. I also do some group stuff. You can fill out the form at the bottom of the Work With Me page. Again, no pressure for anything. Just let's create a relaxed conversation and see where it goes. And either way, I want to help you to move forward, because that's the name of the game. Is we want to go full-time, because that's what I do. I help coaches transition to a full-time business. And today we're going to talk about building your number one business asset, your email list. And when I say the number one asset, you really want to be thinking about what you do with your email list. And really, at the end of the day, think about it like this. Your whole business day, right, is about exposing yourself to more people, educating them, enticing them with whatever you do. So whatever I'll call it education-based marketing is where something like this, right? I'm educating my audience in the hopes that I can provide enough value where either people like you that are listening live or on the recording either listen to it, share it, refer people over, or get it in front of fresh new people that, in places like a YouTube, some social media platforms like that, where people are searching for things, that people can find it, expose them to it, and go like, wow, this is great information. I want more. I want to be a part of this. And so then they subscribe to my, to get another resource, like I said, my Ultimate Startup Guide. They become a part of my email list. And then on a weekly basis, I stay in front of them. So I'm going to go through a little bit of that today. Is just we really want to understand the why piece first. And, of course, everyone's interested in the how-to strategies, and I'll get into the how-tos. I can't go into super detail on the how-tos, but at least give you some ideas where you can get started if you haven't been doing anything yet. But in terms of the why piece, the reason why it's your number one asset is because it's your customer base, right? It's your customer list. I like to call it my email community. It's a place where with email, it's a form of communication. And some people think like, oh my God, email, with social media and everything like that, is email dead? Or why do I need an email list? Things like that. And I'll ask each of you just to answer this, whether you're listening to this live or on the recording, is how many of you checked your email today? How many have checked your email yesterday? How many of you will check it several times before the end of the day? And I would bet unequivocally every single one of you listening to this said yes, right? So number one, if you ever hear anyone talking about email being dead or going anywhere, it's not the case. It's been around for a long time, and it's going to stick around for a long time. So that's one of the reasons why it's our number one asset, is because everyone checks their email multiple times a day, especially people that you're going after. You got to think about your market, but regardless of that, if you ask people that question, yes, they check their emails. So additionally, because of the social media, and I'm not going to call it hype because social media has been around and it's going to stay. There are some platforms that will come and go, but we want to start to understand where our audience resides. That's why whenever you are working with me, whether you're educating it through these calls or one-on-one or in groups, you'll hear me say, we start off with our helping who with what. That's our niche. It's our headline, as I like to call it. Helping who with what specifically. That's going to help us identify where do we find these people, especially if you're doing social media, any online platforms. I wouldn't suggest you be blowing up every single one of them or even multiple ones. I'd be looking at one and saying, which one am I going to blow up? Which one am I going to dominate? Which one am I going to have a strong presence on? And so I can find my audience, but it's where those people will hang out the most. And so that's a piece that's we're going to be having a presence on, right? So, but the difference now of why it's so valuable in email lists is because we really want to start to understand that, because I just said a few minutes ago, social media can come and go in terms of platforms. Something like a Facebook, yeah, I don't think that's going anywhere. Something like a LinkedIn, that's been around for a while. It's pretty solid. I don't think it's going to go anywhere either. But we had some things come and go even over the last few years. Things get really hot and really exciting, but then they kind of dissipate pretty quickly. But there are some staples that are on there. But regardless of that, as an example, I have a private Facebook group that I invited you guys to earlier on. And Facebook could change, right? Facebook's changing all the time. Those of you that are on it, next thing you know, the buttons are different. Next thing you know, there's a different setting, and they're constantly evolving. That's the thing with businesses. Same thing with you, is we've got to evolve. If we don't evolve, we die in business. Your business, the way it looks now, is going to look completely different in 5 years, and it's going to based on technology and social media and what's going on in the world. So we've got to evolve with it. So social media platforms are evolving. So I've got a Facebook group. Like I said, I've got over 1,600 coaches. It's a great form of interacting and connecting with my audience, outside of my email list. It's social platforms are great because it's much more interactive than email, right? Like I'm going to send emails out, but I'm not like asking for interaction. It's kind of like a one-way communication. Think of that's what an email list is. I'm communicating with my people, but it's really a one-way interaction. They can certainly reply to my email. I'm not necessarily asking them to reply for anything. I certainly do get replies. When I send emails out, pretty much every email I send out, except for my Tuesday morning reminder for the live call, but my emails on Mondays and Fridays, pretty much always get at least one or two responses from somebody just saying, hey, I love this email, or this is so true, or, and it's usually a comment on something that I'm writing about, but it's not necessarily an interaction with my whole audience, right? So social media is a great platform for more interaction, but what if all of a sudden I was just relying on, let's say, my Facebook group as my sole source of interacting with my customers and then connecting with people through that, staying in front of people through that, and then all of a sudden Facebook groups change, and then all of a sudden Facebook groups are different, or they make you pay for them and something changes, or all of a sudden they don't have Facebook groups anymore. They change the platform of how it works, and it's not as even close to effective as it is now. Anything could change. So what happens is, or the worst case is a platform just stops or goes away. Now all of a sudden, all of your customers, all the people that you've worked so hard to get in front of is gone. It's gone. So in other words, you don't own social media. So when I say your email list is your number one asset, it's your number one asset because you own it, right? You don't own their emails, obviously, but you can be in front of them. You can communicate with them, and it doesn't matter what else changes in the world, as long as obviously that person still has that email and they check it, which earlier I said, hey, this is the barometer. Did you check your email today? Yes. Everyone says yes to that, right? So the point is that you own that and you can communicate with them at will. And that's why it's your number one asset. Your customer base, those are your assets. That's no matter what you're selling, whether it's a product or a service, however you monetize in your business, you've got to have customers to monetize that. So all of your efforts through any marketing that you do, whether it's live events, paid advertising on social media, in print, in newsletter format, any advertising on or offline to get in front of people, and then those people then, of course, then as they come onto your list, that value, that ongoing value is you making sure you can stay in front of them and you make sure you want to own that. So that's the number one thing, is understanding that why piece. That's so, so vitally important. So let's talk a little bit right now about, exposing ourselves to people. So it's like, how do we get more exposure to build our list? So if it's all about, okay, we understand it's our number one asset, we need to have it, we need to understand, well, how do we build this email list? So I go back to what I said a little earlier. It's going to be very challenging for you to build an email list if you don't know who you're going after with what specifically, right? It's just going to be challenging. If you're general, I'm helping the world get better, you know what I mean? Then it's going to be really hard. Where do we find these people? It's going to be hard to, with any education that you do, on or offline, it's going to be really hard to really capture someone's info because there's so much out there. And here's a general guide that as I work with people mentoring, like if you're hiring me as your mentor coach, one of the first things I'm going to ask you is, hey, are you planning on being, when it comes to marketing and getting more exposure to people, are you planning or wanting to do it more face-to-face, if you will, in the real world, or are you planning to do it more online or exclusively online? Like right now, I'm 100% online. Some people would be like a hybrid and then, let's say, more face-to-face. If you're more face-to-face, you can get away with a more broad or generic headline, if you will. And the reason for that is it's still going to present its challenges, but I did that for a long time. I was doing live events, and I didn't know what the hell. I didn't have a niche. I knew about it. I know I should do it, but I didn't do it. Just like anybody else starting off, right? And I couldn't decide, and all the stuff that I talk about now, that's what I did. But it was okay because what I found is that I can get in front of audiences. I can connect with people. I had great energy. I was delivering some great content, some great information. I had my niche in the sense that people could see it through what I did. I just never labeled myself, right? I came from the health and fitness industry. I kind of pulled that element into personal development, into entrepreneurs in different areas, and it worked for me. But the thing is that I didn't go in there and saying, hey, I'm helping who with what specifically, because I had a general audience, and the topics, the things I were talking about, people were interested in, and therefore, as a result, they were interested in me at that point. It didn't matter, I didn't have to have a label. They didn't necessarily have to go to my website. That wasn't really important because when they're at a live event, people can see you, they can feel your energy, they can hear what you're talking about, and then they can start to see, wow, this person could help me, right? So that, therefore, your statement, if you will, really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter to a certain point, so you can be more broad. But if you're coming to me saying, hey, Jeff, I want to be pretty much exclusively online or more online, I want to rely on that, et cetera, that's when I'd say, you really need to get specific. You really need to get, drawn down to a specific label, a specific population. Like I help coaches transition to a full-time business. I also focus on the selling and marketing aspects. That's a really specific area of the who and with what. It's not just growing your business. It's I want to help you transition to full-time. That's the focus. And then it gets even further niched down when I'm that selling guy. I want to be that selling guy for coaches. You know what I mean? That's where you go into there. So, but I'm online, so that's where you can see the difference between I'm helping everybody with everything versus kind of an example of what I gave you there, right? So if we're going to get more exposure, you've got to decide, well, where am I going to be? And those would be my general guidelines for you right now in terms of what where you need to go. Because if you don't, another thing is how do you stand out? But then also, if you don't answer that question, who with what specifically, then we don't know where they are specifically. Like I was alluding to earlier with social media. It's how do you pick a social media platform if you don't know your who with what? Just because you like Instagram or Snapchat versus Facebook? I mean, to me, that's not a very good business plan of just oh, I like Facebook better than this, and therefore I'm going to be on Facebook. It's well, who are you going after, and why are they on Facebook? Where can you find them? How easily can you get in front of them? Right? So there's a lot of variables there, but when you define it better, that's going to lead you down a much better path. So those are some guidelines to help you if you're thinking about where do I get more exposure to build the list. That's a really big place. Another thing that you need to understand is, well, if I've got people there, whether I'm let's say you decide on either platform, right? Face-to-face, or let's say more virtual or a hybrid version of it. Wherever you're doing, whether you're giving live speaking engagement or you're doing virtual stuff, kind of like this, like my live Tuesday call, like some of the things that I do online in my group, et cetera, right? So whatever you're doing, like a Facebook ad or things like that, at the end of the day, you've got to have some type of offer for people. When I say offer for people, it's something of value that you're giving away. This is what I would call your education-based marketing, right? Some people call it a lead magnet. It's a free offer, et cetera, and that's something that you're giving away. So if I'm going to be speaking live at an event, let's say I'm doing a meetup group. Let's say I'm doing a live event at, just to a group of 5 realtors down the road, right? Or I'm doing a call like this. I'm doing a Facebook ad, right? I'm doing something online. At the end, at some point during that presentation, et cetera, I want to have at least a free offer or something that says, hey, here's something of value for you. And this something of value is going to help you with something that's important to you. And in order to get that, I'm not going to charge you anything. All I'm going to ask you to do is, give me your contact information, basically, right? So when I said earlier, on my homepage at sellingcoaching.com, I have the ultimate startup guide for new coaches. I quote, bribe you with my dog, right? And that's my clever way of marketing in terms of my humor, et cetera. And you get to know me a little bit, gets people's attention. And then you go, oh, wait, I'm not giving away my dog. Of course not. But if you enter your name and email, I'm going to give you the ultimate startup guide. It's a blah, blah, blah resource for you, right? So, but it's something that I know my audience. The title is going to be a really important piece. But then obviously once they get it, hopefully if they consume it, that's going to be like, wow, this person's good, or I like this stuff. I either need this person's help now, or I want to just stay, connected with this person so I can, be in their circle, so to speak. And that's a really big aspect of it. So you've got to have some type of compelling free offer, free gift that's going to be available online on your website. Or like if I'm doing a live event, I'm going to say, like sometimes I've done PowerPoints. If I had a PowerPoint presentation, or I've taken some notes, my notes in my mental preparation for the event, and then I kind of offer those notes. Or if I had something of relevance that's in a PDF form or whatever, I'd say, hey, listen, guys, I got something for you. And I do a thing where I would do lead capture there, and I would just ask people for their contact information. I have different strategies that I work through with my clients on how we do that effectively. But the point is that you can get people's, even if it's a registration form, right? But what's better than that is if they're kind of opting in by raising their hand or filling something out to get this, and now you've got their contact information in exchange for this resource that they're going for, right? So that's what we want to make sure we have. And on top of that, you need to make sure you have an online software program that can facilitate holding names and emails, sending, if you will, autoresponders, something that when someone subscribes, like on a website, it's going to automatically send them an email that has a link to your free offer in that. Something like I would call, like there's AWeber, that's the one that I recommend. There's also like Constant Contact. There's MailChimp. There's about a million others. Those are just some popular names in the coaching circles, if you will. There's a lot more expensive ones, Infusionsoft and things like that. If you're going on my recommendation, for many reasons, I won't go into them now, but I would recommend AWeber, AWeber.com, just AWeber.com. I am an affiliate. That's not why I recommend it, but if you happen to sign up, please give my name. But I really recommend that for many reasons, but just from a deliverability standpoint, customer service, and there's a few more reasons in there, templates, ease of use. But the point is you've got to have a space where you can be building your list. And that's where, because you can't send a bulk email through like a Gmail or Outlook. You got to have an email list that delivers them. You can get the statistics on the back end, and then also it allows you to have the forms online for when people to sign up, enter the name and email address, have those autoresponders. So it does a lot of great things, but that's the number one service you need in your business outside of being able to process credit cards, right? That's the number one thing you need in your business, because it is your business. Like I said, your customer list is your business. So these, I'm just starting from the ground up basically as we move forward is, hopefully some of you are going, okay, check, I got that, check, I got that. If not, that's where I need you to start. Identify your audience, find out where they are, what's my compelling offer, how am I going to collect these names and email addresses, what service am I going to use, and now we move on from there, right? So in terms of strategies to get more exposure, right? And here's the thing where people have all, do this, do that, whatever. I always recommend you start off with free marketing, as opposed to paid. So in other words, like something like I'm doing here versus let's say a Facebook ad, or especially doing like live local free events, or maybe getting publicity in newspapers, either contributing an article or maybe getting someone to interview around something. That's publicity in like print advertising, in print newspapers and magazines or something like that. Ideally, that's exposing you to your target market. I always recommend that first before paying for like an ad in the paper or Facebook ads online, as an example, any type of paid advertising. Because the thing with paid advertising is, and I've done it all, offline. I've done mailers, I've done newspaper ads, different publications, magazines, and what I found is some things I learned the hard way is, number one, it can get pretty expensive. And number two, the payoff's not really there. You've got to be consistent with it, and you've got to know how to follow up with people. And so that's the biggest thing. So I'd stay away from that. I'd look at the free stuff. And here's the thing, when you're looking at free stuff, it's very effective. It's just a matter of getting in front of more people. So there's really no other than you pounding the pavement and going through your contacts, the people that you know, et cetera, finding out people. This is face-to-face stuff. Finding out people that are okay. Who does speaking engagements? Who's looking for speakers? Who would be open to creating a relationship? Who would be open to be interested in having you come in and talk to their employees, to their customers? Or who would be open to being a host to an event? And you can create an event with some local businesses, and maybe some of them are sponsors, and they all promote it. The name of the game in terms of face-to-face stuff is putting butts in the seats. And typically we don't have butts in our seats, so to speak. We don't have an audience, so we've got to leverage that through others. So who do I know? Who do I know that knows somebody else, or who can I connect with? So instead of getting specific, because it's going to be different for each person, those are the questions we've got to ask. Is who do I know? Who do I know that knows somebody, or who can I connect with that I can get in front of? And ideally, the better you've defined your helping who with what specifically, that can then help navigate me to those people that have those audiences, what conventions are going on, what seminars are going on that I can become a part of, trade shows, things like that people are putting together or that I have going already that are like, wow, if I'm working with chefs, there's a chef convention, coming up next week in Orlando, or, probably not that soon, right? But then can I speak at that event? How can I connect to the organizer? Do I get a table, right? So we want to find ways to expose ourselves to new people, right? So that's the questions we've got to be able to ask ourselves, and obviously it gets easier when it comes to knowing who we help with what specifically. So that's one strategy right there, and then online as well with social media platforms, Facebook groups, pages, forums online, books, who's writing and publishing books, what social media presence and following do those people have? Do they list? Do they do calls? Online summits, online events, right, for my audience, who already has a larger audience than I do that I could become a part of. Those people call joint ventures, don't ever discount yourself and like, oh, why would this person want me? They've got a following, and who am I? I have nobody, right? Or I'm just starting off. Well, just never discount yourself, because you never know what value they're going to find in you. The people that I've connected with, like when I wrote my book and I did some, if you will, tours with some people, and they were well-established speakers, and they heard my information, they liked my information, they felt it would be of value to their audience, and they would invite me to their events. Some of them paid me to go to their events. They'd pay for my travel and my hotel. Some of them didn't. And yeah, I had to pay money to get out there, but then I would speak in front of 100 people. There were some events where I spoke in front of 100 people, and I'd go to the back and I sold my coaching, and I had 10, 12 people hire me. And if you're doing a $2,000 package, I mean, I've had $25,000 days at a seminar event because people hired me as their coach, right? So I'm okay spending whatever, $600 on a plane ticket and $1,000 in hotel and food and stuff like that. If I'm getting exposed to those people, if I know I can sell and I know I can convert those people, right? So it doesn't matter how you get there or who you connect with, but I'm saying is don't discount yourself, because these are people, these were multimillionaire speakers who were doing their thing, that were authors, that were very well established, and I connected with them, and I don't know what they liked, but they liked something, and they invited me. And that's how I began to grow my business when I was doing speaking. And then it can be the same strategy online, right? So if someone's doing a call or like I said, an online workshop or online summit or things like that, or maybe you want to put one together and you're going to invite them, right? And hopefully through that they're going to use their audience and they're going to and you'll get more exposure to their audience. If not, you just gain some credibility, right? I gained credibility by speaking with some of these people, face to face in some of these events. I spoke with Mark Victor Hansen, author of Chicken Soup for the Soul, Jim Rohn, Jeffrey Combs. There's some other people there as well, but those are just some names off the top of my head. Dennis Waitley, he endorsed my book when I wrote it. Personal development gurus, things like that. But I leveraged myself with these people, right? So I got exposure to these people. Other people saw me in the same light as them because I was doing things with them, and that's the thing about that. And so that's how we can start to get ourselves out there more. Those are just some quick ideas and also some questions to be able to ask yourself, how do I get more exposure? And then here's the thing, that's the aspect of our marketing, if you will, that gives us more exposure. And so as we get now more exposure, right, we got to bring these people into something. When I say bring these people into something is, okay, great. So I do an event with X amount of people. I don't care if it's 1 or 1,000 people. I prefer 1,000, but if it's 1, I'm speaking, right? If it's 2, I'm speaking. I'm still there. I'm still going to do it. It's a person at a time. Because you have to remember this. It doesn't matter how big your email list is. I'd rather have a list of 1,000 people or 500 people even than 5 million if it means that it's a very engaged, active list, And just think about it like this, and don't ever discount like, oh, I've only got 100 people or I've only got a couple hundred people. If you put a couple hundred people in a room and you had an event with a couple hundred people, you'd probably be pissing your pants, and hopefully in a good way, right? And super excited about it. And if those 100 or those 200 people were engaged or active, heck, 50 people in a room, you'd be pretty excited, I bet, right? I'd be thrilled. And if they were engaged and they love your stuff, that's good, right? So don't think, oh, these people have thousands of people. It's like, whatever. It's like get 100 people and get those people engaged. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I want you to have. And so with that being said, is now we're going to make sure when we do these events, we do this marketing, however we do this stuff, what I want you to do now is I want you to bring them on to something, and then they're on your email list. We've got to stay in front of them to keep them engaged, right? And so, in other words, that means we've got to be sending emails, right? So here's the thing, right? We have an email list. We're building an email list. Okay, great. We got to send emails, right? And I want to rephrase that because that sounds so, okay, email list, right? Well, it is. It's, at the end of the day, it's an email list. But it's your community, right? It's your community of customers, and you want to develop relationships with them. How do you develop a relationship with somebody? Well, you communicate with them, right? You share with them. Granted, it's a one-sided conversation in some ways, but communicate with them. That's what I want you to do, is communicate with them. And you can't communicate with somebody or build a strong relationship by communicating with them never, or once a month, or twice a month, or even once a week. If you talk to your spouse or significant other or child once a week, and maybe some of you do, but what type of relationship do you have, right? It's challenging because you never get to talk. If you, what do they say, ships passing in the night or whatever. It's like once a week, it's too little, right? So we need to do it on multiple times a week. Those of you that are part of my email community, I send you emails 3 times a week, Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. Rarely, but occasionally, I might send another one. But at a minimum, I always do those 3 emails a week, and I focus them around my live event, like my live Tuesday call, like right now. And that's just my way of staying consistent with that stuff. So there's different models you can do that. But either way is, if number one, you've got to stay in front of them at least an email a week. Get up to 2 a week, maybe 3 a week. A lot of business gurus, people that are doing it a long time, they do 1 email a day. They do an email a day. Let me go to the why of this. So number one why, not necessarily in any order, but the number one why, if I rewind to what I just said, it's communicating. And if you want to build a relationship and stay in front of people, and you've got to communicate with them. And so once a month, twice a month, 3 times a week, even once a week is too little, as my little example about with a significant other, right? So it's got to be more than once a week. So that's a reason. Otherwise, we can't build. But another reason, if I go to the selling aspect, because I talk, hey, I'm the selling guy, right? We want to understand this, is people buy based on 2 main things. The need that they have is obviously going to be relevant, big, right? And then it's got to be now. That's the timing. So need and timing. So the timing piece is one of the main reasons people don't buy now. It doesn't mean that they're not interested. It doesn't mean that they don't want what you're offering, et cetera. It's just how is the timing of it, right? You might need a new car, but you're not buying one. Why? It's because the timing, whether it's financially or something's going on in your world or you name it, right? But then when the timing's right, you're ripe to buy, and odds are it's only a matter of time before you have your new car. So that's something you probably easily and very relate to, substitute car for anything else, material or service-wise. So the point being is now from a timing perspective, if we're in front of them at an event, live or virtual, and they're like, well, this person's awesome, and now they're on their email list, and then they don't hear from you till like next month when you finally decide to send a newsletter, right? It's like they've already moved on and they've forgotten about you, or like they don't even see you, right? But the point is now you're in front of them, so now their timing might not be right, but what about in 2 days? What about they go home from the event or they hang up from the call, and then, the next week something happens and they're like, oh my God, I got to do this. Or now's the time for them. And guess what you haven't done? You haven't sent them an email. Maybe you've sent them one, but you haven't sent them another one. We've got to stay in front of people for the timing aspect. And that's the number one thing is that timing piece. If you're not in front of them, you're not top of mind. And when people are ready to buy or do something, if you're not top of mind, it's going to be somebody else. And maybe they're coming from your event, last month or 2 weeks ago, and that spurred on some conversation and some journaling and some whatever and dream board or whatever you did with them, and all of a sudden they're doing this and they moved along and now they're turned on to coaching, whatever that is, and you're not top of mind. And they don't even remember your name at this point, but they know you changed it, and now they search for something, and then they come across me, and then they hire me. Oh, thank you very much for doing all that work for me, right? So that's why we got to stay in front of those people. And then also another reason why we want to be multiple times a week and also be educating those people, doing some consistent education on a regular basis, like my Live Tuesday calls as an example, is because we want to be educating them on a regular basis. That begins to, how about this, leverage your efforts. Leverage my efforts because there are people that are listening to on the weekend, let's say. There are people that are listening to the recordings of my Live Tuesday calls. And I know there are because people will email me, hey, just listen to this call. It was a great call. Or people come to me like, oh, my God, I've been listening to your calls. I've probably gone through all 70 of them so far, or whatever point they were at. I'm like, really? It's great. But the point is that I'm educating them when I'm not working, right? It's leveraging my efforts in terms of building value for what I do as a coach, and me in particular as a mentor coach, right? Helping coaches transition to a full-time business. Right? So it's building value while I sleep, so to speak, right? So that's another piece there. And the email list is the advocate for that, meaning that's the place where you let them know about it. That's the way where you talk to them about some of those things, and then you direct them to, and you could direct them to products. You direct them to offers as well, right? And that's the objective as you build your list more is you want to have products and services that you offer and you share. That's how you can start to monetize your list much better through email than anything else. But ultimately, as you're starting off, is let them know, hey, I got this new call. I did this new thing. I did this new video. Check it out. Educate them. Send them to your website where you've got some strong lead capture, making sure that whoever goes there, obviously if they're coming from your email list, hopefully they're already on it. But again, same thing. That's why I do my social media platform on Facebook or anything else that is. Or I host my videos on YouTube. That's all I use it for, but then I send everybody my website from there. I get clients from YouTube. I get people on my email list from YouTube because what do? I send them to my website. They're interested in the information. They find me, and then they go there, right? So that's where it starts to build a value there, and it keeps me in front of those people. So that's how we keep them engaged. So you've got to have some type of structure set up where you're sending emails at a minimum weekly, ideally multiple times a week basis every week. Not just this week and next week because I was on fire and focused and then had a bad week and, whatever. And then I kind of got off track and one day became a month and next thing you know, oh, geez, I got to get back on my emails. No, it's 2 to 3 times or more a week, every week, forever. And if that's overwhelming for you, okay, just how about a week at a time? But just make sure this week it gets done. Just like yesterday, it was a holiday around here and in the U.S. and Canada as well, different holidays. But either way, that's what my email was. It was like, hey, I'm taking the day off today, but I'm still here emailing you, right? I'm taking some time to email you and set up my call and my event for tomorrow, which is now because this is what we do, right? This is what we do, and that's the important aspect of it, right? So that's how we keep them engaged. In terms of emails themselves, I know we had some questions for the people that called in live in terms of emails. Okay, so we talked about frequency, we talked about why and keeping them in the circle. How do we do long emails, do we short emails, and then open rates and things like that. So let me just talk about that. So first off, in terms of do I do a short email, a long email, or anywhere in between or different styles, and then even open rates or any other statistical questions like that, or maybe more tactical questions, let me give you the first rule. The first rule is don't pay attention to anything and do it, right? If you're not doing it, then none of that stuff matters. And that might sound simple, but it's like, I don't care if it's long or short. I don't care if one person or a million people opens it or nobody. Send the emails first, right? If you're not sending them, no one can open them, and then who cares how short or long they are, right? So that's the first thing. When in doubt, never focus on the details. Details slow you down, details paralyze you, and details keep you from action. And we get paid as an entrepreneur for results. We don't get paid for time. Right? We get paid for results. We get paid for doing. We don't get paid for thinking. You can think all you want. You can analyze all you want. You're not going to get paid for that. You're going to get paid for getting it done. So that's the first thing. Anyone, if you're starting from the beginning of this call, working up till now with this stuff, and you need to work on some of those fundamentals, and you've got an email list, and you haven't sent an email list, haven't sent any emails yet, don't be worrying about some of those details yet. In fact, I wouldn't say really ever worry about those details until you get to the point where if you've got a really large list, you're tens of thousands of people or even bigger than that, you're doing offers and you're doing, lots of sales through your emails because you're doing back-end offers, P.S., by the way, I've got this brand new course or whatever it is, and you're getting, every email you're making $10,000 or you're doing some really good revenue, then I'd start to look at some of these things like, okay, how long are my emails? So short, who opens it when, what the best time of day or night to send it at, which is going to get better response. That's when I'd start looking at this stuff. But right now, and probably for the next long while, just send the emails. Just send them out and write them. That's the biggest thing right there. I will give you some general thoughts around in terms of open rate. I'll say this. Generally, when you have a smaller list, so you're starting off with friends and family, you get a handful of people at an event, et cetera, you got 75, you get 100, 250 people, et cetera, your open rates will probably be percentage-wise higher than what you'll eventually get to. Higher in the sense that, you got a smaller list of people, you got 100 engaged people or people that know you, maybe you could be at 50%, maybe you could be at 70%. I wouldn't say that would be a standard, but I'd say that I remember when my email list was a lot smaller, when I started off, I was getting a much higher percentage of opens because there's not as many people, and I know a lot more of those people. Do you know what I mean? But as time goes on and as your list grows, the percentage is going to get smaller. You can, and that's also going to change per industry in terms of what people communicate, how frequently as well. Like what I experience, my list, let's say it's around 2,500 or so, just a little over than that right now, and I get an open rate between 11 and 18%. I've gotten higher, but I'd say that's probably the average that I see there, 11 and 18%. That's open. It doesn't mean anyone's the 11, 18% is necessarily reading it. I know people are, but that's like an average percentage there. What you have to remind yourself of is what's going to affect the open rate is your subject line. You can role model it from mine. You'll see my subjects if you're on my email community and pay attention to my subject lines. We'll probably put more time into the subject line than anything else. But the thing about that is and I can see it. And the difference between 11% and 18% or whatever it is, honestly, it's the subject line. It's a subject line. Those subject lines that I'm like, ooh, this is a good one. I feel that it's good. Like it will be a much higher percentage. And the ones that are just like, ooh, I don't know about this. Either way, it's definitely a lesser open rate. So your subject lines are going to be the big thing for making sure that you're paying attention to there. Either way, so that's one thing there. In terms of length of email, what I suggest here is essentially first go find a style that works for you. I've had it, like, even people are talking at the beginning of this call, the person was like, oh, I love really short emails. I have a lot of my clients love short emails. Like, for instance, my emails that I send, I wouldn't consider them short. I've had some shorter ones, but there's definitely a story involved. There's definitely scrolling involved. I've done short emails, like I would just do a subject line, and then I would write 2 or 3 lines, and then I would click a link, and then would take them to my website when I had a blog, and I'd finish it right there, right? So that's another strategy as well. And that would keep the email shorter, and then if people are interested, they could click through and read it from there. And I've done it like I'm doing now, where I'm just writing the email, basically. And so I honestly haven't found any difference in that, and also mentors and things that I've studied and worked with as well. It's not so much the length of the email, because honestly, you're going to find people that like both. The people that love short and sweet are going to hate the long stuff, and then there's people that like the long stuff and that read it. But here's what I would suggest is, number one, autoresponders and any automation is only for your initial maybe at least one to maybe 3 or 4 emails when someone subscribes to, let's say, your free offer, and that's basically just saying, hey, here it is. Hey, what was your motivation for getting it? Hey, making sure did you get a chance to open it? Things like that. So you're trying to engage them, but then you get them onto your live emails. I don't want you doing automated emails and funnels. Like, don't get sucked into just like, oh my, these 52-week autoresponders and these funnels. It's like, it's not for us when we're starting our business off, or even, until you're at a really big audience and you can't handle any more coaching and you can't handle any more work and you're hiring a virtual assistant or things like that, like maybe we can start doing some more automation. But for right now, do it 2 or 3 emails a week and write the emails. It's got to be live. And that's what I want you to share yourself, share a story, bring it to a relevant point. Since I've been doing that, I've gotten more people engaged. I've gotten more people that I talk to, my clients, people that I connect with, even on Facebook, through my group and stuff like that when I interact with them. Hey, love your emails, love reading your stories. People will reference them when I talk with them, people that I know through clients, who not. Like, they start to get to know you a little bit better, right? And there are some people, like I've had a client tell me once too, he's like, you know what, your emails are too long for me, but I know I always open them because I know you got the call coming up, or I know you got the recording, so I always scroll to the bottom because I know at the bottom is going to have the topic for the call. I see if it interests me or not, and if I like it, I try and plan on attending or make a note to listen to the recording, right? So either way, they're there. But even remember with this, remember short or long, find your style and what works for you. Switch it up a little bit, do short, do long, right? I mean, yesterday I did a short and sweet email, or I think my subject line was, instead of short and sweet, it was sweet and short. A brain fart, I couldn't come up with a better subject line. I'm like, whatever. So you just do it. Lesser open rate, but it shows, right? But the point is at the end of the day, mix it up a little bit. But just know the number one thing is, I don't even care necessarily who opens it. Of course I want people opening it. Of course I'm taking the time to write it. I know people are. But even if no one did, the most valuable thing is they see your name in their inbox. And even if they're swiping and deleting every week, you're there. And as long as you're there and they don't unsubscribe, which is going to happen, people will unsubscribe, and that's not a bad thing, right? It just leans your list out. But the point is that as long as your name shows up in their inbox, Jeff St. Laurent, selling coaching, swipe delete, I'm okay with that. Because you know what? That's marketing. If I had to pay it to get in front of that relevant person, every week through paid advertising, and then just to delete it, I wouldn't like that, right? But if I can do it and they can just see my name, because that's all paid advertising is, it just shows up in awareness. People that still get Sunday papers or things, circulars in the mail or whatever that you just throw out, it's just so that you see Best Buy or whatever, or you might leaf through it quick and they just brand awareness, right? Best Buy or whatever else is, Sears, and that's it. Same thing with all the email subscriptions that you have, right? It's now you're top of mind, even for the second while they're deleting it. It's in mind because now all of a sudden they see the subject line that gets them curious, right? This is marketing, the subject line that gets them curious, the call topic that gets them to the call, right? The event that gets them to the event, or something that you say that goes, timing's right, that spurs on, and now that turns into a client or for a paid product or service. And that's a big piece of that.